talk to me about your take on the housing crisis in Australia.
We have probably the most migration we've ever had come into the country in at least 10, 15 years.
So my guest today is the former acquisitions manager at Villa World, now works for JLF, which is one of Southeast Queensland's premier developers, where he is the national manager. He is national acquisitions manager, I should say. Gave you a promotion.
Maybe one day, but James would be getting nervous.
The co-host of the Double Shot podcast. We've got him on because he's a subject matter expert in land, which is a really hot issue for first home buyers at the moment. He's a homeowner, he's an investor, and I have little birdie told me that I have some terrible news for the women of Southeast Queensland. I believe he has just been taken off the market.
Mate, it has been formalised, Leigh, but it's a pleasure to be here. It's good to see you as well. It's been a while actually. I think we ran into each other in the airport a couple of years back. So
yeah, we did too. First thing in the morning, you didn't know what hit you when I came bundling up.
I think you came bundling over, yelling some sort of obscenities at me, but no, it was great to see you. So yeah, no, pleasure to be here. Not the acquisitions manager at Villa World. I just thought I'd square that up, but I did work there a little bit and had some experience there. So
yeah, but that was sort of your journey into acquisitions was you went via Villa World.
Correct.
And then
that was my first taste of it, and just loved it.
Yeah. So how long have you been in the property industry for? So
I would be coming up to 10 years now, of which 8 of those have been in my current role, and then 2 previously. Through work experience and a little taste of it at Villa World. So it's been going good.
I had a guest on the other day, Tim Reid. So Tim Reid is former world champion triathlete. So we're talking a lot about sport. And what he was saying was, you spend kind of 10 to 15 years in sport becoming an expert at it. And he said, then you've got a couple of years where you just hit your straps, and then you've probably got another 5 years where people are saying, is it over for you?
Yeah.
So interesting to hear that how this all ties up. It's interesting to hear you've been there for 10 years or in the industry for 10 years, because I've found for me when I've done things, that's where you really start to get mastery of it. Yeah,
although you never consciously think that, right? Like you always sort of feel as though there's so much more to learn. It's sort of reflecting on 10 years, you go, wow, you do pick up a lot through experience, but I still feel as though there's a lot more to be learnt, and looking forward to the next 10 years.
Question without notice.
Go.
If you were to think over the last 10 years in property, what would be either the most interesting or the most valuable takeaways that you've got out of your time doing what you're doing?
Like, I think it's, I think if I was to, the key takeaway is that if you buy land in a capital city, I just don't think it can go backwards. And until I sort of saw that happen, you always had doubts, right? But there truly is a correlation between land growth and population growth, and I've seen that unfold over the last 10 years. So I guess my key takeaway is that basically if you're buying in the right spots and getting into the market, then I don't think you can really go wrong in land. So that's probably the broad brushstroke takeaway of what I've seen over the last 10 years.
So when you're saying in land, you're making a distinction here between buying a freestanding. You tell me the distinction you make.
Yeah, so when I say land, I'm talking about a block of dirt with a house on it, basically, as opposed to a unit or a townhouse. Certainly those assets grow as well, but my job is in land. I don't have any authority to speak on units or townhouses, but I've just seen the way that land's performed. And generally the market, it's been a good 10 years to be in property. Challenges as well, but it's certainly been an interesting ride.
What would your opinion on units and townhouses be, or your experience?
So I live in a townhouse, and so I want to make a clear distinction that I'm talking, if we're investing, and obviously you're dealing with a lot of first home buyers. So I personally live in a townhouse, and that's done really well over the last 5 years since I've owned it. So I think My opinion on units and townhouses is that you can do really well. It just depends on, I guess, what you're buying it for. So for me, buying a home was a lifestyle decision, and I had to weigh up what I could afford versus locations I wanted to live in. So, I decided that being a lover of outdoors, being a lover of the beach, sort of recreation, all that type of stuff, being near cafes and pubs, I had to compromise on the actual product to live in. So I've gone to a townhouse.
You needed to compromise so you could get close to the pub you like. That's all I heard from that.
Look, I want to be able to walk or shuffle home from the pub, depending on what time it is. But no, that sort of influenced my decision. So my opinion on those assets is great. I think buying anything is the way to go, and it's case by case.
Yeah. I had a mate who has just very recently actually bought his first property, which is an apartment which he spent $900,000 on in Brisbane CBD. My personal opinion on that is it probably isn't the greatest investment. And the reason I would say that is essentially what you're buying is a building.
Yeah.
And, buildings and cars are quite analogous in that, you buy it, you drive it out of the showroom, it's going down in value.
Yeah.
Same with the building as well. So you just don't quite have the land content that you own.
Yeah.
But what I said to him was, because someone talked him into it. Someone who was making money off him talked him into it.
Yeah.
And then we were going through it, and he started, getting a little bit upset. I'm like, whoa. Like, the thing that you've done, which most people really struggle with, is you've just done something. And it's not to say that you won't make money out of it. I mean, if you hold it over a long enough period of time, you probably will.
Yeah.
Could you have invested better? Sure. But you'll get another crack at that.
Yeah.
Like, this doesn't have to be the only thing you buy. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree. There's not a one-size-fits-all type of investment strategy, but it's you've just got to select investments based on what you're looking to achieve. And obviously a unit and a townhouse are going to have a higher cash flow, right? So if people are searching for that, they may, be skewed towards that type of product. But yeah, growth's typically in the land, as you say, and the land content. And that's certainly where I spend most of my time anyway. So I've probably got a significant bias towards it.
Yeah, for sure. Well,
yeah.
That's a good point. Like, I mean, that's where we spend most of our time too. So we've got a bias towards it. I also find that people get into, particularly first home buyers, can get themselves into a bit of trouble with apartment and townhouse purchases.
Yeah.
Where they make significant financial commitments today, like you have to pay, a 10% deposit or whatever it is, but you don't actually settle on that property for, maybe a year and a half.
Yeah.
And apartments is actually a great example where in a year and a half's time, you don't know if you'll still be able to borrow, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And nothing might have changed in your situation. Like, you may still have exactly the same job, but interest rates have gone up 12 times in 18 months.
Yeah, I know.
And all of a sudden you can't borrow, so then you lose your deposit because you can't settle on the property. Or the other one on apartments, which is a huge one, and a lot of people don't realise this, is the bank will send a valuer to value that property. And what you can borrow, so let's say you've got an 80% or 90% loan to value ratio.
Yeah.
So that means the bank will give you 90% of the value of that purchase. But people think the value of that purchase is their contract price.
No.
It's not. It's what the valuer says it's worth.
Correct. Unless that valuer says it's worth more than the contract price, and then those pricks give you the contract.
Yeah. Well, it's whichever's the lower of the two.
To your point, yes, that's correct. A lot of people are confused when it comes to that, and a valuer can very easily make or break a transaction. And as you say, if you've put a 10% deposit down and you're unconditional on that sale, you don't have a choice. Unless
sorry to interrupt you.
No problems.
What does unconditional mean?
So basically your contract has no further conditions to satisfy. And so oftentimes people will buy subject to a condition. That may be getting a finance approval, building and pest, there's an array of different conditions.
What's FIRB?
For the Foreign Investment Review Board.
Oh, okay.
So if you're a foreign investor, anyway, getting a little bit too technical here, but basically an unconditional contract means there's no further conditions to satisfy. You're required to settle that when the seller's ready.
Yep.
If you don't, you're then in default. So to your point, if a valuer comes in a year later, says, hey, it's not worth what it was when you bought it, you've got to chip in an extra $30,000 to settle and you don't have it, then you're in a position where you'll default on the contract potentially and forfeit your deposit, which could be substantial.
Yeah. And with apartments in particular, it's not unusual.
No, not at all.
I mean, I think if you for a listener, just talk to someone who's bought an apartment
Yeah.
and ask them if they had a valuation issue. And I want to go out on a limb here and say at least 75% of people you talk to will tell you yes.
Yeah.
Geez, that's a big limb.
That's a big limb. Look, I would agree with that. I'd say there's also scenarios where people would have bought apartments a year ago and made money on them as well.
Very good point. Yeah.
So, like it's... I think you've just got to be aware of your risks entering into any transaction and just be comfortable with various scenarios that could play out. But yeah, buying further out, like you've just described, off the plan, I think is what you were describing there, comes with a lot of risks, particularly if you're a year or two out from settlement.
Yeah. Like when we deal with our first home buyer clients and we're getting them into homes, we won't let them sign unconditional contracts.
Yeah.
So all of the contracts we do have a finance clause.
Yes.
So for the listeners, what a finance clause is, you basically go to a developer and say, hey, I want to buy this block of land. Mm-hmm. However, I need a loan in order to get the property.
Yeah.
Now, I'm happy to give you some money, e.g. deposit, so you know we're serious.
Mm-hmm.
However, in the event that we can't get the loan, we need to be able to exit that contract, get our deposit back free of penalties.
Yeah.
And it's a really important clause for first home buyers.
For sure.
Sometimes for investors as well. I know you work a lot more in the investor space, but first home buyers, like if you've spent, 5 years or however long it's taken you to save up your 30, 40 grand deposit.
100%. It's literally like you say, it could be 10 years of savings. You don't want to punt that, to use a Bogan Gold Coast term, but you don't want to punt that on a developer delivering a unit or townhouse or block of land when they say they will, because there's always a lot of risks that come with that. So you want to be protected, particularly if you've got your life savings tied up in it.
Yeah, it's a big issue, and in fairness to developers, some developers are great. Like some developers will really work with buyers, but a lot, they're running a business and it's a development business, I mean they'll take your money if you're in default. Most of them.
Yeah, and I sort of wear both hats sometimes. Obviously, we work with a lot of clients. We also do developments. It is tough on the development side because certainty to a developer is key, because they need it from their contractors. They could have costs going up as well. I think that taking deposits is a dangerous behaviour, particularly if you're concerned with your reputation. I think that I can't remember where I'm going with this point, but basically developers have a lot of stuff going on that buyers may not be aware of as well. So you've got to find a balance, I guess.
Sure. Well, I think that would be an interesting path to go down, because obviously we're very aware of the impact on buyers. But what are the impacts on developers? Why are they taking people's deposits? What's going on in the background for them?
No, I'm certainly not defending developers taking deposits. I don't think that's good practice. But for example, developers requiring unconditional contracts to get certainty, I can understand. Particularly, you have banking covenants to your funders. You need to ensure that you've got your settlements tied up and ready to go.
So banking covenant means nothing.
Oh, sorry.
To us, what does that mean?
Like if you've got a development financier, you have to comply with a certain amount of conditions there once you get titles and all of that type of thing. So
what you mean is, like, in order for you to get financing, a bank might say to you, we need this value of unconditional contract signed. Is that what you mean?
Correct. So a bank might say, hey, you need X amount of sales by a certain date. They've all got to be unconditional and they've all got to have 10% deposits.
Yeah.
So sometimes it is dictated by the funders. Other times developers just want certainty. I think that there's always going to be a natural tug of war between a buyer and a developer, and I guess the best developers will understand what a buyer's going through and try and consider both sides of the coin, I guess. Because and I want to be clear, I'm not saying developers should be able to take deposits at all.
And not and not trying to throw you under the bus either. Get you in here and we're like, it's the big bad developer. But I think I personally find it interesting to hear what's going on from the developers' side of the coin, because I mean, there's a reason they're doing it. And my experience of the world is most people are genuinely pretty good people.
Yeah.
Most people have a lot of humanity to them. You've been in this game a long time, so have I. There's some people out there who, they're like sociopaths. They could not care less.
Yeah, there is.
There's one developer in particular I'm thinking of at the moment.
Okay.
But most people want to do the right thing.
Yeah.
But they have their own pressures.
Yes.
And we're as first home buyers, we're not necessarily aware of it. So I think it's good to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely.
With the big bad developer.
No, we're one of those good ones that you were just talking about.
Let's get into some real meat.
Okay. We're getting straight into it here.
There's a land crisis at the moment. Would you or would you not agree? Well, first off, there's a housing crisis.
There's a housing crisis, and a subset of that's certainly land supply.
Why Mitchell scale? Is there a housing? I didn't introduce you at the start with your name.
I think we've just gone, bang, let's get into this.
I've been listening to too much of your podcast. So Mitch's podcast is called the Double Shot Podcast.
Yeah, the Double Shot. Yeah.
And I swear to God, both of you have a double shot before you get started on that.
Probably 80% banter.
Very quick banter.
Yeah. No, we're normally walking in. I'm walking with a nice long black, James with a double shot flat white, but it's a bit of fun. So head on over if you want to have a listen. Where can people find it? All of your platforms, so Apple, Spotify, all of that.
Yeah. Shout out to the Double Shot Podcast. So I'll throw myself off now.
You were saying land, housing crisis, land, or you may be going to introduce me. I'm not sure where you were going.
Oh no, what I was going to say is if you're drinking a double espresso, that is where your addiction to caffeine has just gone to the next level. I have zero desire for taste. I just need the effect as quickly as possible.
Yeah, exactly right. It's just basically give me it pretty much the step before an IV drip.
Yeah, it's the crystal meth of the coffee world.
Correct. But it does the job, that's for sure.
Yeah, so talk to me about your take on the housing crisis in Australia.
So I think that point number one, we have probably the most migration we've ever had come into the country in at least 10, 15 years. I think last year we had 650,000 international migrants, so people moving from other countries to Australia. And I think in the last 18 months, it's close to 900,000.
So why? What?
I think in the last 18 months.
18 months. Yeah,
close to 900,000. Look, they are capping that. So this year will be somewhere closer to 250, 260 is what they're forecasting. But that's still a lot of migrants, particularly if you look at, say you need one house for every two migrants, right? Yeah. I don't know whether that's correct or not, but I'd say two people will need to be living in a house.
Yeah.
That presents a challenge because we've got to build more houses. We're already not building enough houses. I think that you may recall recently the federal government set that target that they wanted 1 million houses delivered by 2026. Mm-hmm. So I think it was 200,000 houses a year. I think we built 160,000 homes last year. We'll build less than that this year. And I don't see a scenario where we're ever going to be able to build 200,000 in the short term. So to round that point out, we're having people come in, and that's demand for housing effectively. Migrants is demand for housing. We're already not building enough houses, and that compounds the issue. Yeah. So I think that's the crux of the housing crisis. There's obviously a lot more detail and particulars, but I think in general that's my takeaway on what's caused it or what's causing it.
So I'll ask you some questions here, which they may or may not have taught you in your economics degree. No, I'll ask some questions which you might not know the answer to, and
probably not, but I'll try not to make them up.
if you don't, it's totally cool. Obviously, everything we're going through, I mean, all of this is conjecture and opinion, right?
Yeah.
But beginning right at the start, why is there so much migration?
It's a good question. I mean, I would say that in the first part, Australia is a fantastic place to live. A lot of migration is coming from China, from areas overseas where people may be seeking out a different lifestyle, a bit of a haven. I'm not sure. There's also a lot of global conflict going on at the moment. Australia, for rightly or wrongly, is considered to be relatively safe. We're kind of detached from, a lot of the world down here.
Well, it's an 8-hour flight to anywhere.
Correct.
Yeah.
And then, socially, we have great healthcare. We've got great employment opportunities, the ability to earn income, and we're relatively affordable compared to, some other developed countries like, say London, New York, all of these types of areas where you're not going to be able to buy a house there ever unless you're multi-millionaire. Whereas you can come to Australia, buy a house within 30 kilometres of a CBD, and that's probably half of the problem, right? That we're not utilising land to the best of our ability and sort of streamlining density, but you can, and people want that. So I don't know. I'm sort of just spitballing, but I think that I love Australia, and compared to other parts of the world, it's affordable, great social care, great climate, and good place to live.
Australia was a great place 10 years ago when they weren't letting in 650,000 people per year. So do you know of something that's changed to open up the floodgates so much?
No, I don't. I mean, we need more taxpayers because we've got an ageing population. We also have a very tight labour market. Unemployment's at record levels of, record low levels. It is creeping, which is good for anyone riding interest rates and wanting them to sort of stay or go down. But I think that bringing in skilled migrants is a good thing in some sense, because we do need taxpayer, to basically offset the ageing population that's retiring. And we do need labour, which all sort of funnels back into this housing crisis, right? Like, we don't have enough labour to build them. We don't have enough land to build them on. And we probably don't have enough policymakers streamlining, bureaucratic red tape changes.
So we've got land for days.
Yes.
However, we haven't got land which we can build on, which they've released. Okay, I do want to get to that, but I kind of want to almost systematically work through each bit of this so we don't miss anything. So I think you hold on one sec.
No worries. all that audiobook recording.
Oh God, yeah. That was hard.
Yeah, I can imagine.
No, it was. So the thing with the audiobook was what I didn't realise is, so number one, you've got to talk for like 9 hours or whatever it is. But for me anyway, when I eat, you can't breathe as well. So you get a little bit gaspy. So I'd have breakfast and then I'd go in and start the audiobook recording, and it wouldn't be until like midday where the food had worked its way through, where I wasn't gaspy.
Right. Okay.
It was weird. Yeah, that was seriously hard
torture.
Work. Yeah. It wasn't like I didn't mind it. I just underestimated how difficult it was.
I would think that would be difficult. But yeah.
I thought it'd be a walk in the park. I'd just
sit there and have a read.
Yeah, read my book, have a coffee. None of that.
I wouldn't have thought so, because you'd be so focused on making sure you have the right tone, the right inflections, not stumbling, not mumbling.
Yeah.
But anyway, I don't wish that upon my worst enemy.
Well, then I talk with my hands and I move around a lot. I actually get complaints on the podcast, stop banging the table.
Oh, really?
Yeah. But so you do that in this studio, but when you're talking in the studio, you need the mic is at like a 45 degree to your mouth, because they don't want you talking into it, because then you do your p and your t, and it makes a really awful noise. So you need to be at a 45 degree angle, but you need to be very close to it. And then if you're moving around, like I kept having to redo bits because I got anyway.
Well,
it was hard.
I'll have to give it a listen at least for all of your efforts.
Yes, yeah, it's worth one of your Audible credits.
Okay, cool. Sorry, yeah, where were we?
So you were talking about immigration and needing to increase the tax base.
Yeah.
And I think this is an interesting point because we have a declining birth rate.
Yeah.
So if we didn't have immigration, we would go backwards. But the way society seems to be set up is it's kind of like a Ponzi scheme where we always need to be growing so the younger people can look after the aging people.
Yeah.
And then, a measure of that is finances. Is how much money's getting about, and tax base, which you spoke to. So because what a lot of people say, and I understand why they say it, is they're like, stop all the immigration, like let us catch up.
Yeah.
But economically, we need a solution. We need an economical solution to the aging population, which isn't migration. Like there's unintended consequences of switching off migration.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, no political party wants to go to a ballot saying everyone needs to tighten their belt, like no new spending, no new roads, like everything needs to stop while we fix this.
Yeah.
So instead, that's very simplistic, but
sure.
Instead the immigration keeps coming. So I don't have a solution. I just recognise the problem.
Yeah.
But I also recognise that you can't
turn it off. I agree.
Unless you're going to solve for all the things that immigration solves for.
Yeah, which like you say, I don't have the answer for that. I do think there's merit in some sort of cap or some sort of criteria that needs to be met. And, depending on how you look at it, I think that if you're bringing in skilled migrants in areas that we need that work, then why wouldn't you? But I think having an open door policy, presents probably more challenges than benefits.
I don't think we got an open door policy?
Well, not really, but 650,000 migrants last year was. I don't know if you call that an open door policy, but it's a
lot of people.
It's a lot of people.
So my understanding, which could be wrong, in fact, I think I've just made it up, but my belief was that the reason it was 650 was because there was essentially nothing during the COVID period,
makes sense.
and it was a catch up. Because traditionally, I believe we've always sort of sat between 200 and 275,000 per year.
Yeah, and I think that that level's probably sustainable. You'd have to look at the breakdown, right? A portion of those are students. So students probably aren't paying tax, or, they're not working in full-time roles. You've also got, migrants will come and do jobs that everyday Australians don't want to do. Out in the regions and, things that you probably wouldn't have, your everyday Australians seek out. The migrants will do it on the basis they can come over and live.
Yeah, well, you look at all the travellers who you can stay for another 6 or 12 months if you go fruit picking.
Fruit, yeah.
I think this is also a really good point because skilled migration is important. So, for example, at the moment we have a skill shortage in tradies, which is one of the roadblocks to more housing. So we bring in skilled tradies to shore that up. Or,
yes.
It could be scientists or doctors or whatever it is.
Yeah.
That's one part. But the other part is also unskilled. I don't know if unskilled is the word, but not bringing in trade-specific migration. So the gap that I see this plug is. Do you have kids?
No, I don't. No kids.
Right. That's why you don't have wrinkles. So I think if you talk to most people who've got kids, and again from the cheap seats because I don't have kids, so this is secondhand information.
Yeah.
But most people want their kids to do better than them.
Yes.
Right? So I want to give you a better life than what I had.
Yeah.
And I want to give you more opportunity. I think that's how a lot of people look at it. But so there's some sort of social ladder climbing which they want their kids to undertake.
Yeah.
I think then I'm sure there's some people who just want their kids to be happy.
Yeah, sure.
But all of those jobs that people are climbing out of still need to be done.
They do, yeah. The economy requires them, but
so we need people to do it, which again is, you know, migration.
Yeah,
plugs.
There will never be a perfect solution, but I think that no doubt the powers that be are directing a fair bit of attention towards it.
The other thing that you said, which I'd heard, it's Michelle Bullock, isn't it?
Yeah,
the RBA governor.
RBA governor.
So the other thing I heard her say is she's like, we need unemployment to increase.
Yeah.
And I understand economically why she's saying it. Like it makes the economy more efficient.
Mm-hmm.
But when I heard it, I'm like, that's such a harsh thing to say.
Yeah.
I want 300,000 Australians to lose their jobs.
Yeah.
I'm like,
yeah, it's concerning when you look at it that way, for sure, because those 300,000 people are people with families, people that require that job to live. So it is a very crude way to look at it. But obviously, I think she's wanting to stop wage. You're wanting wage growth to basically sort of taper a bit, or at least sort of even out with inflation, I think. So there's no, so the inflationary pressures ease, I guess, is the point.
So the cost of everything is going up, which people are struggling to afford.
Yeah.
And then we're like, hey, we need your wages to stop going up. You're like, hold on a minute, I need my wage to go up because I can't afford all this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, it'll take a smarter economist out there, and certainly a smarter person
economist
than me.
Than you.
Well, I'm not. I think I did an intro to economics and got a C or something like that. So I'm certainly no authority to comment on that. But yeah, I think RBA want inflation between 2% and 3%. They want unemployment healthy. Healthy is probably a really bad word to use, but that's what they want. And I think we're not seeing interest rates go up at the moment. Inflation is trending down. But I saw, out of the budget, there was a lot of stuff in there that would potentially counteract that trend, given a lot of households are receiving additional money in their pocket, which is a great thing. But, through electricity and utility relief, through rental assistance and all of this type of stuff, which could easily be inflationary if it's spent on, things like, alcohol, tobacco, all that type of stuff that's driving inflation at the moment. Yeah,
well, This is just something I've heard, not something that's a Leigh Anderson original, but I'm told Labor is often big spending government, as in they spend a lot of money. But the issue is the whole thing that kicked off this inflation thing is started handing dosh out over COVID. Yeah, well,
I think I had a quick look at the budget, line items breakdown. A third of the entire spending for 2024 is social and welfare. So it's like 260 billion out of 700 something billion. So it's a fair bit of money being spent on it, and a large portion of that's NDIS, right? So I'm not saying it's not worth spending. It certainly is. But yeah, it's it's a lot of money.
I'll give you an interesting stat. So we looked at the demographics of our clients. Who they are, what jobs they do. This is a little while ago now. And 1 in 5 clients that we had at least one of the couple receive their income from either the NDIS or NDIS related services.
1 in 5?
1 in 5.
Wow.
Yeah. It was just overnight, all of a sudden, everyone we were talking to worked or contracted for the NDIS. It's crazy. It's such a huge employer.
Massive, yeah. Well, there you go. I think they're getting 60 billion NDIS in the forecast expenditure, so it's a fair bit of dosh.
Start talking numbers that big, and I can't. It's too much. It's too many zeros.
It truly I can't relate. I guess at the end of the day, you collect revenue from tax and you spend money.
Yeah.
Ideally, want to collect more than you spend, but I don't think that's going to be the case moving forward.
All right, so if we're stepping through this housing crisis, where we were was...
Yeah, we went on a real political tangent there.
Yeah, we did.
I probably should issue a caveat to say that I've got no idea what I'm talking about when it comes to politics, but that's my view and mine only.
No caveats now, big bad developer. I kid. I'm joking.
Cool.
So, to try to kind of sum up where we're up to.
Yeah.
Essentially, what you were saying, to make it simple, is that the housing crisis is being driven by too much demand, not enough supply. What we've spoken about so far is the demand coming from migration, and in our expert opinions.
That's one segment of demand for sure.
Yeah, but there seems to be no solution to what immigration cures. So it's unlikely that it will stop. Is really it.
Yeah.
All right. So then we move into, so that's immigration done.
Yeah.
And that's what's driving the demand. So what's happening with supply? Why aren't there enough houses?
Yeah, so I think you need land to build houses on, for starters, and land is constrained beyond belief in most of the capital city sort of catchments, particularly in areas like Brisbane, Adelaide and Perth, which are really affordable and have seen probably more sales volume and population growth than they had expected. So I think that land's constrained, so you can't deliver it quick enough. And then I think CoreLogic released their listings data, and that was basically that our listings of houses on the market currently is about 18% under the 5-year average. So people aren't selling homes, right?
Right.
And then I think we're 3% down year on year as well on that. So supply in established markets down. You can't deliver enough land to build new houses. It sort of just all results in this equation where you just have too many people wanting to buy houses, too much demand, and not enough ability to meet it.
So for the development work you work on specifically, you obviously work in Southeast Queensland that I know about, where a whole heap of our clients are. What about, do you do development work in Melbourne as well?
We don't do developments in other states, no, just Southeast Queensland.
All right, cool. So we'll zero in on Southeast Queensland, but I think a lot of the fundamentals are the same anywhere you go around the country. Why? So if I spoke to our clients, they'd go, well, I actually had someone comment on our TikTok that AV Jennings was strategically withholding 14,000 blocks that they could release because they just want to make more money, and they're blaming essentially greedy developers for the lack of land that's out there.
Yeah. Okay. I'd be very surprised if that was the case.
Why?
Because 14,000 so it's a listed company for starters. They need settlement revenue and they need to hit KPIs, for shareholders. To hold back 14,000 lots, which I'd imagine is the majority of their pipeline, particularly across the country. It doesn't make sense to me. If they wanted to get more revenue, they'd just price their blocks higher and release them now. I get that you obviously get the benefit of the market moving, but they also have cost risk as well. You wait a year, you don't know what costs are doing. You could push your blocks 50 grand and your costs might increase at the same amount. So it doesn't make sense to me that would be the case, but look, I don't have any idea. I just know that that sounds a bit strange.
Yeah, sure. And look, I mean, don't believe everything you read on the internet.
Especially on TikTok. I don't use TikTok, but I can imagine it's taken the world by storm, and there'd be a fair bit of activity in the comments.
Are you on Instagram?
I'm on Instagram, yeah.
Instagram. Child's play compared to TikTok.
So
I got on TikTok obviously for work. So a lot of what we put out is on social media. So I don't know if you know this, but the premise of how we go to market is we go out and say, hey, we want to help first home buyers get into the market. So there's an issue in Australia where first home buyers believe that buying a home is out of reach forever, and that is rubbish. It is very, very difficult, but it's not impossible. So what we do is we try and push out the solutions to it as best we can. And then as a business, we know a percentage of people will do that through us, which is fantastic, but a whole heap of people won't. And that's totally fine as well. The mission of the business is to try and move the needle in any way we can.
Yeah.
So what we do is we go where people are looking, and where people are looking is on social media.
Yeah.
So that's a very long-winded way of me justifying why I downloaded TikTok.
Yeah, for sure. Look, it's certainly like I used to think TikTok was for teenagers, but it's certainly not. I know a lot of people consume their news through TikTok. They consume most of their sporting updates through TikTok, and also their business interests and passions and things like that through TikTok as well.
So what Meta does, which is Facebook, Instagram. Meta works on the network effect, right? So I engage with a piece of content. So it goes, well, Leigh likes that. Leigh's friends with Mitch. Mitch might like that. So it will push that content to my friends.
Gotcha.
And then if my friends like that, it does it again. And it's the network effect.
Yes.
And that's how Meta decides what to show you.
Interesting.
So you know how... everyone goes, it's listening to me. And look, maybe they are listening. But if you spoke to Meta, which I do talk to Meta quite a bit, they would say to you, if you believe Meta has been listening to you because you're getting ads about something that you spoke about, that is just our algorithm working perfectly. But
it's a very efficient algorithm then. Yeah. It comes up very soon after you've spoken about it.
But like what will often happen is we're talking about a trip to Barbados or whatever. Yeah. And then I'll go home and without you knowing, I will Google something about Barbados. Or maybe I've already done it, which is why it's come up in conversation.
Yeah.
And then Meta pushes that to you because we're connected.
For sure.
And then you think that it's a conspiracy, which I want to say it could be a conspiracy. Like they could be listening. But that's how Meta works. How TikTok works, and this is just my understanding, which could be wrong. TikTok tries not to work out what your friends like.
Yeah.
It tries to work out what you like. So I got on TikTok to begin with, and I'm just like, this is rubbish. Like, I don't understand what the big deal is. But then slowly over a course of like maybe a month, it zeroed in on what really interested me. And my God, like I genuinely struggled to put it down because it's serving me up things which are so interesting that I didn't even know I'm interested in.
Okay.
Apparently, I really like the history of the world's conflicts. So I get all of this stuff. Like, it's incredible, but it will serve up to you exactly what you want, how you want it. So if you like things that last for 30 seconds, bang, you've got it. If you prefer videos that are in 3 parts that go for 20 minutes that are on world history, like I seem to, it will just keep giving it to you.
Yeah, right.
It is so good. It's so good to the point that I don't even look at Instagram or
big plugs
Facebook.
Are you on their payroll?
No, like I'm addicted, like a crack addict.
No, I know many of friends that are, share that view. So I'm not sure I'm convinced to give it a go yet because of that reason. I'll probably like it too much, and then screen times. I'm trying to reduce it rather than increase it at the moment. So
like I'm 41 years old and I'm brushing my teeth watching TikTok videos. It's terrible. Anyway.
Great.
What was the whole point of this? We push our info out on TikTok what I'm getting at.
Yeah, gotcha.
And then the comments, I've actually had to stop reading comments because to begin with, like I was in there, I was responding, like some people had some really interesting takes on things. And I'm like, hey, I never thought about that way. And then the people on the internet are so mean.
Oh, they're very mean. Yeah,
so
like
mean.
very, very mean.
Talking about my looks and how unintelligent I am, and I'm sensitive. Oh, that hurts my feelings, you bastard.
I think best not to read those.
So anyway, when someone says that AV Jennings is withholding 14,000 lots, like take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
But I think more the point I wanted, or more the principle I wanted to discuss with you as someone who's in the development game is, do developers deliberately hold back blocks? And I think what you're saying is, although you can't be in everyone, you don't know what everyone's doing. But I think what you're saying is they don't hold back blocks, they put prices up.
Yeah, I mean, like a developer's got to weigh up revenue versus like retention of sales, right? So you can sell a block for whatever you like. Mm-hmm. The more you sell it for, and the bigger the risk that the valuation comes in short, or you may have to resell it again, So you're typically wanting to sell in line with market conditions, because if you've got to sell a block 3 or 4 times, sort of, offsets any additional revenue you can get given the cost of sale to get someone to the point where they're transacting with you. So yeah, I don't know. Every developer's entitled to sell their blocks for whatever price they decide. But they run risks with that if, for example, they're being unscrupulous or, trying to price gouge. But I guess at the end of the day, market value is just what a willing buyer is wanting to transact with a, seller for. So
prices are going up
Yeah.
because there's a shortage of land.
Correct, yeah.
And is the shortage of land, I mean, with all things in life, nothing's black and white, but is the shortage of land being caused by developers not releasing blocks?
No. Not in my view. I mean...
Yeah, that's all opinions.
I would find that
right?
very odd.
And then developers are doing what developers do, which is they're selling at market rate. And the whole premise of like the world we live in is, the market meets itself.
Yeah.
It's capitalism, right? Where, I'll try and sell it for more. And if no one's buying it, I'll have to sell it for less.
Yeah, that's right. The bargaining power shifts between cycles in the markets, right? Like you may have the stages where the market's in a downturn, or there's some sort of external intervention that's caused sales to slow. The buyer then has the bargaining power. A buyer would happily purchase a block at a discount in that time.
Yeah.
So on the flip side, you've got to pay what the market's willing to pay in high times.
So why isn't there more land on the market? Like we have the 7th biggest landmass. I might have made that up in the world.
Yeah, it sounds convincing.
So we have a massive land mass. I mean, albeit quite a lot of it's desert, but we've got land, right?
Yep.
So I drive out the back of Pimpama, where there's allegedly no land, and there are paddocks for days.
Yeah.
It's not that there's not land. I can see it. There's cows feeding on it.
Yep.
Why aren't we releasing that land for people to live on? Because correct me if I'm wrong, if there was a massive glut of land that came onto the market, prices would go down.
Yeah, you would think.
Yeah.
Based on my economics 101 class, so that'd be a likely outcome. Yeah, so sorry, why won't they just release all this land?
Yeah,
Two
why
things.
isn't there more land?
For starters, planning. It's not zoned. It's constrained with, say, environmental. There's a bunch of different constraints that can prevent land from being developed. But the biggest thing in my view is that it's not serviced. And what I mean by serviced is there's no sewer running out there. There's no electricity running out there. And that takes a long time to deliver.
Right.
So a council, state government, they're not going to allow you or issue approvals on land like that unless someone can live there. And to live there, you need basic services. So that's, I think, the biggest challenge that we have at the moment as a country, as a developer, as a buyer, as a person living in Australia, is that there's not enough infrastructure under the ground to increase density in a lot of these areas where you see land.
Yeah. So this example is very, very rudimentary, but like I look at the land out the back of Pimpama and you'd say, I'd love to develop that, but there's no sewers.
Yeah.
There's no electricity.
Yeah. There's no ability to get planning approvals or all that stuff. But
the planning approval thing annoys me because if planning approval comes from government.
Yeah, it comes from a level of government depending on what location you're in.
Yeah. And we've got the government saying, there's a housing crisis, it's the Greens are saying it's the investors' fault, these people are saying it's the developers' fault. Everyone's pointing fingers where there is land there, and the government is holding up the approvals to get the infrastructure in. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So it could be funding. It could be multiple different reasons, but it's just not being delivered quick enough. But to your point, so the state government sort of control housing policies in the state, right? They set sort of agendas and all of that, but local governments field development applications and approve it. Right. So they're two different bodies, and yes, that state can have an influence on a local government, all that type of thing. Like we're actually seeing in New South Wales, the state government came out and said, we're rezoning all of these catchments within 400 metres of a train station to go to 6 stories. And we're doing it, and local councils, you have to accept development applications for that. Whereas typically it's up to a council what they approve. They're the ones that, rely on their planning scheme. So it's a little bit disjointed. So state could make a policy decision and then council may or may not choose to accept it. And I think they've got to get a little bit more aggressive with their agendas and making sure that local governments adopt what they're trying to do.
Yeah, it's the old NIMBY thing. Yeah, not in my backyard.
Yeah, that's right. And look, at the end of the day, the local councillors are elected by their constituents. And could you imagine someone that's lived in a location for 20 years just having a block of land next door is zoned to 6 stories and going, oh my God, my home, my backyard, it's all different. So you got to weigh up so many different stakeholders, impacts, and it's a tough job. I certainly don't wish to be in a position where you've got to consider every stakeholder in a planning, policy decision.
Yeah. Yeah, fair. Fair.
But I think one thing to sort of round the point out on land supply, the quickest and most efficient solution is density by, just basically allowing you to deliver more dense products in and around areas that are serviced with transport, serviced with, employment, schools, all that type of stuff. Because that doesn't mean because you don't have to go and rezone any more land. Sorry, you don't have to go and deliver any more land. It's already there.
Yeah, this is like where the city of Brisbane is allowing people to essentially build granny flats as way of right now.
Yeah, and that's a great example of that was a state government decision and Brisbane City Council adopted it. Whereas some other councils within Queensland haven't. We've
probably attacked the housing crisis from just about every angle that we can. And the unfortunate result I get out of all of these discussions that I have with people is nothing. We're going to be years fixing this.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any quick fix.
No.
The one thing that I always lean towards is any solution that doesn't involve more supply, I think is destined to fail. I think that we need more houses.
Yeah.
Thank you, Captain Obvious.
Yeah, well, no, we do. Unfortunately, I wish I had the solution because you could be a very wealthy man or you could certainly be a very popular man if you could solve that problem. But it's one that I think moving forward will always be present.
Let's talk about your journey into housing.
Yeah.
So you've got an investment property.
Yep.
And you've got a home that you own.
Yep.
How old are you? Do you mind me asking?
33.
33?
Yep.
How old were you when you bought your first property?
So we bought it in 2019. So what's that? Is that 6 years ago?
Yeah, something like that.
5 years ago. So yeah, I'd be around sort of 28, thereabouts, 27, 28.
They didn't teach you maths in your economic 101?
No, certainly not. I've become reliant on my Excel spreadsheets and calculators, so quick math, no good.
Okay, so you did your first one in 2019.
2019, yeah.
Investment?
No, that was my home that my wife now and I bought back then to live in.
Congratulations.
Yeah, so we went down that route first.
You guys planning on having kids?
Well, I hopefully be lucky enough one day to have kids for sure. So yeah, I don't want to sort of put any undue pressure on my beautiful wife, but at some point I'd love to have kids. So yeah, certainly the intention.
So the first house was an owner occupier.
Yep.
Talk me through the journey, the thinking, the emotions, what happened.
Yeah, it was a lot of emotions, and I think, separate to the investment purchase, which we'll get to in a bit, but it's a completely different experience. Mm-hmm. I think I touched on it at the start. A lot of your decision making, buying somewhere to live, is driven by emotion, lifestyle, rather than numbers on a spreadsheet and data. So I think that's probably we probably looked for 3 months in the lead up to buying it. We looked at everywhere. The first thing we did was go to a broker. We just decided that going to a broker to figure out what we can afford was the first step. Basically, what can we afford? How much cash will we need to chip in? And then that sort of at least allowed us to set some, criteria for where we could look. So got that, and then off we went. That was the fun part, the realestate.com trawling, jumping on, looking around, chatting every night. Katie sending me $1 million homes that we can't afford. All of that stuff. And then, we sort of, we figured out we want to live as close to the beach as we can, given what our budget was.
As close to the pub as you can.
Close to the pub, close to the cafes. So all of that, which we valued as a, high on our list of things.
So when we've got a process, so
Yeah.
it's a 5-step process that helps people get into a home, and it's all based around principles. So the first principle
Yeah.
is affordability.
Yeah.
You know, your goals have to be realistic,
Yeah.
and they have to be attainable. Otherwise, they're never going to happen. It's basically as simple as that.
Yeah, exactly right.
What's your partner's name? Katie?
Katie, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Katie can send you $1 million homes till the cows come home.
Yeah,
but
yeah,
if
yeah.
you can't get a loan to get it, then, you know, it's
Yeah,
just
and
always
it
going
was
to be...
tongue in cheek. She sort of was just being ambitious,
Yeah,
so to
sure,
speak.
sure.
Did
Did you find... Was there some level of compromise between what you would have ideally wanted and what you had to do?
Oh, absolutely. I think, you know, before getting our capacities,
Borrowing capacity.
I would have loved a house with a backyard and a pool. But unfortunately, I would have had to go a long, long way away from the beach to get that. And we sort of weren't prepared to do that. So, yeah, compromise is what we had to do. So we looked for more affordable options. Townhouse is where we landed. We bought a townhouse in Burleigh, which is like, I love Burleigh. I grew up in that postcode. We're a kilometre from the beach. It was affordable at the time. It worked for us. And we bought it brand new too, so we could capitalise on all the grants that were available at the time. I can't remember. I think it was only 15 grand back then, but I think there was some stamp duty concessions and bits and pieces. But we effectively bought brand new to get those grants.
Yep.
And I think that's one of the things that I was a little bit of a non-negotiable. If we could have found something that was brand new, that we were buying that ahead of something else that was established.
Yeah.
Because of the grants.
Yeah, so geez, your property would have gone up in value.
Yeah, it's
chronic.
it's been great. Like it's you never could have imagined, and it was quite funny. Like we literally bought to the cent of the top of our capacity. I remember settling the property, and the next day we couldn't have bought a coffee. Like we had zero. You logged into your bank account and there's nothing in there. It was such a strange feeling, but such a great feeling too, because you knew that it had gone to, you know, what would become your nest egg and hopefully leverage you into more opportunities down the track. So, but yeah, it was quite daunting at that point. Like transferring every cent you have, every cent you've saved into a solicitor's trust account for settlement and going, oh my God,
yeah,
we're sort of on the bones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it is nerve-wracking. I had Reedy, so who was the last guy on the podcast, he was talking about what advice he'd give to first home buyers, and he said something which I thought was really good. He said, you'll work it out.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, it's scary. Yeah, the repayments seem huge. Yes, you're giving up all of your savings, but don't stress, you'll work it out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, that just made me think of it. How long were you saving for?
So like to be honest, I wasn't the most fiscally responsible person when from 18 to 22, I reckon. There was a fair bit of like irresponsible spending going on there, as you need to do, as your right to your passage, your passage. But pretty much from sort of 22, it was, all right, we need to start thinking about that. And I'm lucky that we were sort of conditioned from a young age from parents and family and friends, and you need to buy property, you need to get into the market. It was just drilled into me from a young age. So
did you find that stressful?
I didn't find it stressful. It wasn't done in an aggressive or malicious way. It was more so done in a my family or my mum and dad, when we were growing up, would always own their own house. They didn't have any investment properties, but they'd own their own house. They'd sell. They'd get in the next one, sell. And I sort of saw it happen and unfold in front of me. So I think part of that was I could see them doing it. They were saying, the best thing we ever did was buy a property. Like you need to do it as soon as you can, but not in a way that I felt pressure or stress. No.
Interesting, because I was lucky that my parents were the same. With you need to get into property, and a lot of people don't have that, which means the sort of fire under the backside doesn't come until much later. But I too was irresponsible in my 20s.
Yeah.
Perhaps my irresponsibility went on a little bit longer than yours.
I think I've probably put a little bit of a conservative spin on the span of irresponsible spending. But anyway, we'll talk in general terms.
A little bit of mayonnaise on that
Correct.
story.
Yeah, that's right.
But yeah, I didn't get my first place until my 30s. And I remember for me, not that I ever would have said it quite like this, But I felt like I was a failure.
Yeah.
Because I hadn't done it.
Yeah.
And I couldn't see a way to do it.
Yeah.
And the problem seemed so big that it was insurmountable. It chipped away at my confidence in a way that's kind of hard to describe.
Yeah, I can certainly relate to that. I think if you know, like when we didn't own a property, it was always in the back of your head. Like, and then someone would ask you and you go, oh shit, or, you know, particularly working in the industry at the time. Like I think I started working, 10 years ago. So I was 5 years in the industry without a property, and I saw everyone around me doing well at a property, buying property. And it was definitely a little bit of anxiety in the back of your head. So I can relate to that point you made for sure. But it was quite funny. I remember going to settle the property.
Yeah.
We thought that, most banks will have fees associated with the settlement, like, you know, line fees, application fees, all of that type of thing. Mm-hmm. And we thought they'd already be factored in to the loan amount, but we weren't aware that it came out of the loan amount before settlement. And our solicitors rang us the day before to say, oh, you're $3,000 short. And as I said, we'd already put all of our money into we're going, oh my God, we don't have $3,000.
Yeah.
So you're scrambling. So I think, it's probably just a point to make is that, try and just be across the numbers a lot moving into settlement, because that was the most stressful part 24 hours before we were meant to settle, and we had to come up with $3,000.
So we're obviously settling properties all the time, and we're dealing with people who are in exactly your situation. Like we are scraping the bottom of the barrel to get in there.
Yeah.
And I couldn't tell you the number of times that banks stuff up their funds to complete, how much money you need to have. So, clients get notifications via the solicitor, but from the bank that they need to have $33,000 in there. They're like, what? We got $50 left. What are you talking about? And it's just bananas. 24 hours before settlement's going to happen, and everyone's still mucking up their numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's super stressful for people who haven't done it before. It was super stressful for me when I was first doing it.
The whole settlement process is a stressful one. So I think it's important you get good lawyers that are experienced in that. Like, don't go the cheap option. Like the cheap sort of option with a conveyancer can sometimes lead to things like that being missed.
Yeah.
Searches not being done properly, or, outstanding rates bills that the developer hasn't paid and that carry over to you as your debt. All of that type of stuff. So I think we were told, my dad's a lawyer, so fortunately we were told that, go and get someone that's experienced, and then I think have a I don't know. We found having a broker really good too.
Yep.
Your banks are great, but you can't pick a phone up and call, a bank, basically. Yeah. Like, you got to go through different departments, whereas a broker you can. And so, I'm stressing out, and they put you at ease. So we thought broker was great, yeah. Yeah,
definitely. Yeah. How'd you go growing up with a dad who was a lawyer?
It was fine. In what context do you mean?
Well, my mum's a lawyer.
Okay, gotcha.
Mum wasn't always a lawyer. Mum used to be a flight attendant for Ansett before Ansett went broke. Yeah. And power to her as a single mum, just at night times or whatever, she plugged away at this law degree for 10 years and got it.
Good on her.
And then, became a lawyer later in life.
Sure.
And she became a lawyer, and all of a sudden everything was an argument. No question could be answered directly. Every question was answered with a question. I was like, Jesus, just stop, would you?
Yeah.
And that's what I was alluding to. Which was,
okay, yeah. Yeah, no, you definitely have to mount some pretty compelling arguments to get your way as a kid arguing with the lawyer parent. But I just normally go and do that to mum.
Yeah. You know what I found? What I found full on is just how much those guys work.
Yeah. It's a tough grind.
Yeah.
And people have the common misconception that they get paid a lot of money from the get-go.
No.
It's not correct. Like, you've got to work your way up before you get the big bucks. And then, yes, you do get paid handsomely, but
there's a lot of sacrifice.
If you worked it out per hour, it wouldn't be, Wouldn't be that good. So, no, shout out to all the lawyers.
Yeah, not as good as it appears, for sure.
Yeah.
Actually, I found that with a few things. I think I might have spoken about this on previous episodes, but I dated a girl who was en route to becoming an orthopedic surgeon.
Yeah, right.
Which is one of the more lucrative surgical parts.
Bones and things like that.
Yeah. And I looked at what she was doing, and like she would literally sleep at the hospital once a week because she's just like, I'm on call, it's easier.
Yeah.
And I looked at the sacrifice she was making, particularly as a girl in an industry which orthopedics in particular is quite heavily male dominated. Like there's a real boys club thing in there.
Sure.
And I looked at it and I'm like, this isn't worth it.
Yeah.
I wouldn't recommend anyone do this because this is...
Yeah, I feel for the medical profession and fraternity because they work in their studies for free for a long time, learning and have to make a lot of sacrifices, as you said. I've got a lot of friends that work in that field, not as orthopedic surgeons, but as nurses and doctors. And it's... I just don't... Like the placement and all the free work is tough.
Yeah. We digressed quite a bit.
So we're talking about bought Townhouse, made compromises, settled that, no money. But yeah, it's gone great. It's gone great since then.
So, can you put words to some of maybe the emotions and fears that you went through in the lead up to settling your first property?
Yeah, I think the first one was like the valuation. That's obviously stressful and scary because you're getting a valuation done and you got no idea what it's going to come in at. You've signed a contract. Fortunately, like we talked about before, I had the ability to sign that subject to finance. So It was still scary though because once you've signed, you've made the mind up that you've started decorating it. You've started, putting your furniture in your mind. You're like, oh my God. So you really want it at that point. And having the valuation process was, was a little bit scary. Fortunately, it was all good.
Yeah.
And then I think just all of the stuff that you will never know unless you actually go through that transaction. Like you can research, you can talk to people that have done it before, you can do all of this type of thing, but you can't prepare for everything that's required. Like, the stuff you've got to give to your solicitor, the stamp duty bills, first homeowners grant, making sure the bank can front that at settlement so you're not 30 grand out and then got to pay it afterwards, that type of thing. So I think, putting it into words, probably can't put it into a single word, but it was exciting is probably where I'd land. Exciting and rewarding once it's settled.
Yeah. Do you remember the first time so you built, right? Well,
it was built at the time. So it was basically just about to hand over when we transacted on it. Different time in the market. You wouldn't find that these days where something's ready to hand over and you can, buy it and settle it 30 days later. But yeah, it was already approaching handover and a period where you could settle it.
Gotcha. So, and you bought it with your partner?
Yeah, with Katie. Yeah.
So when you and Katie walked into the house as the first time as the owner, do you remember that?
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, it was great.
Tell me what happened.
Yeah, we just walked in. The developer had left bloody screws in the wall from the display furniture. So we were like, that's not great.
Yeah.
But outside of that, we just walked in and we were like, wow, you've got security of an own home, which was almost a relief. We touched on before, having that sort of thing in the back of your head that was like, you don't own property. Yeah. That was gone. And you're like, wow. That's awesome.
It's ours.
And then, that's right. That's probably the best feeling is we own something. Because to that point we'd rented. You don't really own your cars. You've got finance on them. We didn't really own anything as far as, particularly not the biggest asset that you'll own in your life. So, that was probably the feelings I can recall. And then, just getting all the furniture in, buying it one at a time because you obviously have to save up the money. Sort of you get the couch, you're sitting in a bare house and then, you'd have a bit of furniture, but we sort of decorated over a bit of, over sort of in tranches, should I say.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's cool.
It is cool. I really like asking people that question, and it takes me back to my first time in my house, which I go through on every podcast, so I won't do it again. But like hearing the emotions from other people, it takes me back. Like I often get goosebumps.
Yeah.
I am going to go there again. But I stood in the foyer of my house, and I was on my own. I just looked around and I'm like, I can't believe they gave this to me. Like, if they knew who I was, no way they would have let me have a house.
Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah.
Cool. So we bought that house. Can you, as a percentage, as some numerical thing, can you give me how much has that thing gone up between 2019 and now?
It's probably almost doubled, I'd say.
You've doubled your money.
Yeah, well, obviously we owe money on it, but we've certainly, the value of the property's doubled, and our equity's probably increased by, like more than that. So, no, it's been great, and there was no sort of strategy to it. Like we just bought when we could, and that's probably the biggest takeaway is that I think if we had waited, which we considered, like, should we save a bit more? Should we wait? If we waited 6 months, we wouldn't have been able to buy that property. We would have been further out, and we may not have had the growth that we got. So we may have been priced out of an area that we now love and live in. So I think, to me, if any first home buyers are considering it, like, it doesn't matter what it is, get your borrowing capacity and go and buy something within that and do it as soon as you can.
The guys here always tease me because I say this all the time. But if you wait, there is one of two outcomes.
Yeah.
Right. Outcome number one, which is the best case scenario, which funnily enough you hit all of these points.
Yeah.
Outcome number one is you will pay more money. For a smaller block of land, which is further away.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's the best case, and this is what people forget. The other alternative is you may never be able to buy it all. And that's getting worse and worse now. And there is a situation in Australia at the moment which, if it isn't sorted out, being a lifelong renter will be a reality for a large percentage of people.
Yeah.
And you only need to, we're a young country, so you only need to look overseas to see examples of that. And you spoke about it at the beginning of the podcast where you said we're still affordable. Like if you look at places like New York, London, whatever, you need to be a multi-millionaire. And we seem to be on that same trajectory.
Yeah.
Like I'll give you a stat on it. If you want to buy a house and land package in an outer suburb, cheap, right? Cheapest one. You need to earn, not the cheapest one, we're just broad brushstrokes.
Yeah.
Don't yell at me in the comments. But minimum chips as a single person is you need to be earning about $125,000 a year.
Yeah, right.
Medium wage is 95,000, I think.
Yeah, so more than the median wage.
Which means the average Australian on their own can't buy a property.
Yeah.
Which,
yeah, it's tough.
I get into trouble for swearing too. Stop swearing. But it is. It's no good. But everything that you've said and that, that I see, that situation's getting worse, not better.
It's not going to get better.
Yeah,
No.
There's still an undersupply.
Yeah.
You said the RBA's trying to make unemployment go up, so wages stop going up.
Yeah.
But the undersupply is still there, so property prices will keep going up. Like the situation is getting worse. But I personally don't, if I ever find someone to make children with me, which I'm not doing well so far, but I wouldn't want my kids to grow up in a world where owning their own home isn't an option. But the clock's ticking.
It's getting the entry barriers are getting higher and more significant.
It's easier if you're a couple, like you.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
you don't need to earn that much more.
Yeah,
like
assuming
it's like
both
maybe
people are
140.
working, the dual income's great, and then the deposit's normally the biggest hold up. I think it'd have to be.
Not anymore.
Really?
So, depending on your situation, we can literally get someone in $0 deposit.
Yeah, right.
but that's on a guarantor loan, so
Sure.
you need to have parents.
Yeah, gotcha.
But with all the grants that are available, again, depending where you want to live, you can get in for like 15,000 around there.
Oh, there you go.
If you qualify for all the grants and if you do it now. But the thing is, because there's all of these grants, that bit of the market, so for example, you need to be under 700,000 total purchase price to get all of them.
Yeah, you'd be flat out finding that in southeast Queensland these days.
Which is the issue.
Yeah.
Yeah. So your investment property, when
Yes.
did you buy that?
We bought that in 2021, so 2 years later.
Okay.
Yeah, block of land.
How'd you buy it?
With money, but with a lot of debt.
Well,
But yes.
Let me put more words to that.
Yeah.
Given you had $0 left when you
Sure.
bought your house in 2019,
Yeah.
and then you were saving up to furnish things,
Yeah.
how did you go to 2 years later you're buying an investment property?
So like we certainly saved a lot of money up.
Yep.
And then like basically sort of worked with my employer to sort of set up a bit of a saving strategy as well there. Just sort of, I won't go into too much of the detail, but basically allowing me to access some stuff or banking basically some income so I could get it later down the track and forced savings effectively.
Yep.
So I did that and then basically went and got the highest LVR you could possibly get across anything and paid LMI again, did all of that and just went, we need to do it. So, but back then I think we paid, it was in Pimpamar. So it was before Pimpamar got above 500 grand. So it's sort of, like again, very lucky timing. Today I think you wouldn't find that in Pimpamar.
You think?
Yeah.
Like you wouldn't,
Yeah.
you'd be lucky to find something at double that.
Yeah.
That's an exaggeration. But yeah, it's super expensive. I remember, so we used to work at the same place many moons ago.
Mm-hmm.
And when I first started working there, which is quite a while back now, I think I'm right in saying that Pimpamar was under 400.
Yeah, that would have been. And we were getting $80,000 short valuations at the time.
Yeah. And I remember talking to people and they were telling me it's the arse end of the world.
Yeah.
Who'd want to live there, blah, blah, blah. And you look at it now and you can't live there.
No, you can't.
But it's very easy to look backwards and to sort of armchair quarterback in the past.
Yeah.
But what I sometimes find challenging is talking to people and going, okay, so you've seen this example here with Pimpamar, right? Now, I'm telling you right now that, I'm just going to make up an area, but Glen Eagle or Bow Desert is in the same situation.
Yeah.
And they look at you and they go, bullshit.
Yeah, because...
But that's what we were saying back then as well.
Exactly.
But it's the relentless march of progress where, like I was saying before, prices go up, block sizes get smaller, and affordability moves further away.
Yeah.
And, you leave it 10 years and you are going 20 to 40 kilometres further out.
Yeah, like when you started and when we used to work together, it would be quite common to see a block at 450 to 550 square metres. That was kind of the average size of blocks that you were seeing in the market. Today, that's a large block.
It's a huge block.
It's a huge block.
It's a unicorn.
Yeah, exactly right. So yeah, to your point, land consolidates and price proliferates.
Yeah. What would you say to people? Because I quite often get this where people go, I'm going to wait for the crash to come.
Well, I've never met anyone that has picked the top or bottom of the market. So I think that it'd be a long wait. If you're sort of trying to guess, it's sort of like a bit of a gamble, right? But yeah, I've never met anyone that's successfully done that.
Yeah. I'm not sure I've ever seen it, to be honest.
No.
So I've certainly seen prices go down when we're talking about high-end properties.
Yeah, correct.
But when we're talking about your meat and three veg properties, which is the more affordable end of the market, the best I've seen is prices stabilise.
Yeah, and that's typically what happens, right? They just stagnate, then they go up again. Stagnant, yeah. So I think it's a tough business trying to pick what the market's going to do. You just got to follow the data and operate and buy when you can and when it suits you.
Let's wrap this puppy up, shall we?
Awesome. Sounds good.
So, if you were to give one piece of advice to an aspiring first home buyer, what would it be?
I think it's been the theme throughout a couple of segments of this podcast, but don't get too caught up in your dream house for your first time. Like, I think you just got to figure out what you can afford, figure out where you can live. And when I say where, where you could get by and buy something. Because you might get your dream house 2, 3 or 4, your first property is going to be the platform to your dream house. So I think to summarize that, you're not getting your dream house for the first one, just buy something.
Yeah. It's good advice. It reminds me of my business partner, Aaron. He's got a daughter, Izzy, and Izzy's 5 going on 27. And she always says to me in a tiny little voice, which I can't imitate, but she always looks at me and she goes, Leigh, you get what you get and you don't get upset.
So Az has been running that for a while there.
Yeah. They teach her that at school, apparently.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah, and then I said it in front of another mother who had kids in a different school and she knew it as well.
Yeah.
But it is a little bit of that with your first home, right? Like, you get what you can get when you can get it, and you'll be able to work your way up.
Yeah, exactly right.
Cool.
Perfect.
Where can people find you if they're looking for you?
Double Shot is the podcast, James's podcast. I'm on it also, and then you go there. I think at the Double Shot Instagram. I'm not a big social media guy, but you'll find me out there.
All right,
cool.
Mitchell Scale, thanks for coming in.
Thanks
Great
for having me. Cheers, mate.
See ya.